No, but, a lot of people ask me about that and say, what's the secret of Mrs. Brown? And I don't know if there is any secret about Mrs. Brown. She's a bitch. I mean, she's an old cow. I also think that she's at an age where she doesn't care what she says.
A wig, a housecoat, and a foul mouth turned a broke Dublin comedian into one of the wealthiest entertainers in Irish history. But behind the laughter that built that empire, several of the people who helped create it walked away, and not all of them left smiling. Mrs. Brown's Boys is one of the most polarizing sitcoms in British and Irish broadcasting history. Critics have mocked it for 2 decades. Audiences have kept it alive for just as long. But away from the studio audience's roaring laughter, something quieter and far more complicated has been unfolding among the people who made the show what it is. Cast members have exited one by one, some with warmth, some with silence, and at least one with a lawsuit. This is the story of why they really left. To understand the departures, it helps to understand what made the show unlike anything else on British television. Brendan O'Carroll didn't just write Agnes Brown as a character, he built an entire universe around his own family. His wife, Jennifer Gibney, was cast as Kathy. His daughter, Fiona O'Carroll, played Maria. His son Danny played Dermot. His sister, Eilish O'Carroll, became the beloved next-door neighbor Winnie McGugan. Longtime friend and former publicist Rory Cowan was handed the role of Rory Brown almost by accident, meant to be temporary until a real actor was found. What started as a stage play in Dublin pubs in the early 1990s, built around a character O'Carroll first wrote for radio and later for his self-published novel The Mammy, eventually became appointment viewing on BBC One, drawing audiences that dwarfed most other British comedies. That family-first casting approach gave the show its unmistakable chemistry. It also meant that when relationships shifted, whether through personal choice, professional grievance, or simple burnout, the cracks were unusually public and unusually personal. The first major exit that truly rattled fans was Fiona O'Carroll's decision to step away from the role of Maria Brown, the quietly essential daughter-in-law of Agnes and wife to Dermot. Fiona wasn't a guest star brought in for a season. She had been part of the Mrs. Brown story since before there were television cameras at all, performing Maria on modest Irish stages through the 1990s and into the show's eventual BBC run. When it was announced in 2022 that she would not be returning for the live stage tour, speculation moved quickly, as it tends to when a creator's own daughter steps back from a family production. Was there conflict? Had something broken between father and daughter? Fiona addressed the rumors directly and firmly, explaining that after more than a decade playing Maria, she had reached a point where she wanted to build something of her own rather than continue living inside a character written by someone else. She described the choice as one rooted in self-reflection rather than crisis, tied to wanting more time with her own children and a desire to grow outside the walls of the Brown household. Brendan O'Carroll publicly backed her, telling the press that she was his daughter first and an actress second, and that he respected her for knowing what she needed. Maria may not have been the loudest character in the ensemble, but she served as the show's emotional ballast, the one person who reacted to the chaos the way a real person might. Her absence left the series a little less grounded, even if the transition itself was handled with unusual grace compared to what would come later. Rory Cowan's departure in 2017 hit differently, because Rory Brown wasn't just a supporting player. He was, for many viewers, the soul of the show, all bleached hair, biting wit, and theatrical flair, delivering some of the sharpest exchanges opposite O'Carroll's Agnes. Cowan had joined the world of Mrs. Brown long before it reached television, originally working behind the scenes promoting O'Carroll's early stage productions before being pulled in front of the curtain. When he announced he was stepping away from the live touring show, fans assumed a falling out. The truth, as Cowan later explained in interviews and in his memoir, was far more personal. He had spent over a decade caring for his elderly mother while balancing an exhausting touring and filming schedule, and after her death he found himself reassessing everything about his life, including a job that had quietly stopped bringing him joy. He has spoken candidly about feeling emotionally disconnected from performing during that period, describing a kind of grief-driven burnout that made continuing untenable. His exit forced producers to recast Rory Brown entirely, handing the role to Damien McKiernan, a former Mr. Ireland with limited prior acting experience. For longtime viewers, the shift was jarring. The new performance was different in tone and energy, and much of the original chemistry between Agnes and her son simply wasn't there in the same way. Cowan, for his part, moved into other work, joining the long-running Irish soap opera Fair City and publishing a memoir about his life and career, all while maintaining that his exit had nothing to do with conflict and everything to do with needing to reclaim his own time. If Cowan's departure was framed as quiet self-care, Gary Hollywood's exit in 2020 was the opposite: sudden, public, and legally contentious. Hollywood played Dino Doyle, the flamboyant hairdresser and comedic partner to Rory Brown, a character that had become a fan favorite for its warmth and its sharp comic timing opposite both Cowan and later McKiernan. Then, without warning, Dino simply vanished from the Christmas and New Year specials. There was no farewell scene, no explanation offered on screen. According to Hollywood, the root cause was a pay dispute. He has stated publicly that he and Damien McKiernan discovered they were being paid significantly less than other cast members for the 2020 holiday specials, and that when he raised concerns with the production, he was dropped from future episodes. He later pursued legal action against Fiona O'Carroll and the show's producers, citing unfair dismissal, discrimination, and unequal pay, a case that made headlines across Ireland and the UK and forced a show built on its one big family image into an uncomfortable public spotlight. O'Carroll denied wrongdoing, describing the situation as a misunderstanding rather than any deliberate unfairness, and maintained that he had tried to resolve matters privately before the dispute became public. Hollywood has largely kept the finer legal details out of the press since his exit, though he has spoken about the disappointment of how it all unfolded. He continued working in stage productions afterward but never returned to Mrs. Brown's Boys, and for many fans, the loss of Dino left a gap in the show's chemistry that has never quite been filled. Jennifer Gibney's story is different again, because unlike the others, she never officially left the show at all. As Brendan O'Carroll's real-life wife, playing his on-screen daughter Kathy, Gibney has been part of the production since its earliest days, portraying the sharp, career-minded psychologist who served as the family's voice of reason. But over the years, attentive viewers noticed her screen time steadily shrinking, her scenes growing shorter, her presence increasingly peripheral. Naturally, rumors followed, including speculation that the show's central couple was experiencing behind-the-scenes friction. Both O'Carroll and Gibney have dismissed that narrative directly, explaining in interviews that Kathy's reduced role was a deliberate creative decision made together, intended to open space for other characters, including Buster, Winnie, and Grandad, to be developed further. Gibney has spoken about feeling that Kathy's storylines, largely built around failed relationships and family embarrassment, had simply run their course after so many seasons. It's a rare example among the cast departures of a change that was mutual, intentional, and free of controversy, even if longtime fans still felt her absence as the loss of one of the show's steadiest characters. Finally, there is Damien McKiernan, whose story is really the story of what it means to inherit a role the audience never fully let go of. Stepping into Rory Brown after Cowan's departure was never going to be easy, and McKiernan's take on the character, quieter, more restrained, less theatrical, drew constant comparison to the original. He remained with the show for years, appearing in specials and live tours, and by most accounts conducted himself professionally throughout. But McKiernan's own presence eventually thinned in the same period as Hollywood's exit, with reports linking his reduced involvement to the same pay disputes that pushed Hollywood out. There was no on-screen send-off, no public statement marking his departure, just a quiet disappearance from cast lists that mirrored Hollywood's own exit. For McKiernan, it meant carrying the near-impossible task of replacing a beloved performer, only to leave under circumstances that were never fully explained to the audience who had grown used to seeing him in the role. Taken together, these departures tell a story far more layered than a simple sitcom cast list turning over. Some left out of grief, some out of exhaustion, some out of a need to reclaim their own lives, and at least two left amid allegations of unfair treatment that briefly overshadowed the show itself. What remains consistent is how deeply personal each exit was, a reflection of a production built almost entirely on real family and real friendship, where professional decisions and private lives were never easy to separate. Mrs. Brown's Boys continues, still loud, still divisive, still pulling in audiences nearly 15 years after its television debut. But for the people who once stood in that fictional kitchen and helped make it a phenomenon, walking away was rarely as simple as it looked from the outside, and the empty spaces they left behind are still felt by the fans who remember exactly who used to stand there.